In the prosecutor's opening statements, she discusses the rarity of the sentencing Ethan Crumbley, the defendant, is facing, namely a juvenile facing the possibility of life in prison without parole. That being said, there's a standard of evidence to be met by the prosecution to justify such a sentencing. She also discusses Miller v. Alabama, a Supreme Court case ruling the sentencing of individuals to life without parole unconstitutional, but was still permissible in that such a sentence could only be imposed after careful judicial consideration of the individual's circumstances and consideration of the offender's maturity level. That being said, the defendant's maturity level is readily apparent throughout what we've seen so far, the knowledge of how to hurt things and what things are on the table to hurt, finding these infant baby birds and torturing them, recording it and sending it to friends is just absolutely abnormal behavior. And when his friend actually said to him, "Oh, it might start with small animals, but you might want to kill something bigger later on," he simply said in a joking way, "Yes, sir." Meaning, yeah, I probably would be interested in killing larger animals or people. I just can't even begin to describe it's absolutely disturbing reading this person. I don't even know if I would call it a person. The defendant's journal. He talks about seeing a group of girls in the hallway just sitting down, probably just talking before class, maybe planning something for student council or just what any normal high school student does with their friends in the hallway. And he says that he would love to see not only their brains get blown off, but also he would want that clip to be played in court in slow motion so he could witness the family's pain, because he has, quote unquote, so much darkness in him. I don't know, to me it's giving pick me, like I'm so different and I'm disturbed and I need to show everybody how disturbed I am, when as a matter of fact you need to actually receive help of some sort and not hurt the other people around you based on some made up narrative in your head about this darkness. Because, of course, you do have darkness in you, but this isn't your personality trait. This isn't a justification. And then his journal goes on to talk about making cocktails of some type of terroristic bomb. Just an idea, I guess, to add in there. Gloves, a hat, jacket, mask, knife, the gun he wants to use. I have every last bit of hope help me. All these smiley faces, angry faces. It's disturbing. He says he'll tell someone close to him. He says he wonders what life in prison will be like. And it just seems to me entirely just, I'm doing this because I want to. I'm doing it because it's within me. I have this darkness that can't be addressed by any other avenue that exists in the world because I know everything. And to actually sit there, I mean, really picture this. Sit there with a pen and pencil and a notebook after you see, let's say, somebody on the street asking for spare change, or, you're in class or you're at your job and you just see somebody walk past you. Whether or not you recognize them, whether or not they're a new face, whether or not you've known them for 10 years, whether or not they're talking to you or not, they're going about their day. This isn't some plot against you. They're in the same place as you because they're your peers. They're your coworkers. They are human beings. What is the threat in seeing somebody sitting in a public place that you've not only been exposed to for the last 15 years, going to school, but you try to justify it and then revel in the pain that is being planned to be caused to these innocent people and their families? Then we see the Google searches that he was looking up the day before the murders, the school shooting. And it's pretty much just, what sentence will I get? I'm not going to get the death penalty, but what can I get? What is it like in there? What was the aftermath of other school shootings where the entire community was distraught, so I can get a glimpse at what I'm about to do? It is absolutely sick. Looking up 4 different times. What is the worst prison sentence you can get? 3 different times. Life sentence for a 15-year-old. So you're going into this expecting some type of sentencing, but what he doesn't know is what he thinks he knows. The laws change in certain circumstances. Here we see that he was planning to, for his first kill, target a girl who has a bright future. Sickening. He says that he didn't plan on killing teachers, but he did actually have a specific one in mind. Then he says, "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad." He discusses his plans to surrender, and claims that he has to do this. Let's hear what the prosecutor has to say.
And he researched response times to make sure that he surrendered before the police arrived. And he did not because he wanted to witness. He stayed alive because he wanted to witness the suffering he created. When the United States Supreme Court and the Michigan Supreme Court talk about the rare case and the defendant, this is the one, Your Honor.
Seeing the victims' families in the courtroom is ridiculously hard, especially listening to their testimony and the effects that this had on their lives, their livelihoods, their day-to-day. It's unimaginable. And like the prosecutor noted, it was completely intentional. It was planned. And he wanted to see this. He wanted to see the pain in the room, in the community. He wanted to surrender. He looked up response times. He researched the prison sentences. He looked up prison life. He had an exact plan. There's no disputing that. But why?
I saw that as early as age 10. Matter of fact, even going back to age 6, there were some issues. I interviewed a neighbor, and looking at the records, which were corroborated, is that he was left unattended as early as age 6. He would go across to the neighbor's house, especially when there was like a thunder shower, and reported that he was afraid and would ask for help. And they would ask him where were his parents, and his response was, "I don't know." In the records, at age 10, there's text messages between Ethan and his mom saying to her, "When are you going to come home?" And there were no responses. In my interview with Ethan, he explained that he spent countless hours watching various adult games. Some of them are in my report, and Assassin's Creed, Grand Theft Auto, and he also spent an inordinate amount of time going to different websites and indulging in various graphic scenes, and indicated after a while he began to fantasize about being a part of those scenes. So he sort of lost track of reality.
You also have listed trauma. What is trauma?
Trauma is sort of an insult to the person, an insult to the brain. So it could be as a result of parental discord. It could be as a result of high levels of anxiety or high levels of depression. Anything that insults the person's brain can be classified as trauma.
What about constant stress from parents fighting?
Yes, parental dysfunction, constant and intense dysfunction, can induce trauma. In my interview with Ethan and in a review of the records also, there's frequent references to either parent threatening to commit suicide. And on some occasions, Ethan has had to be the one intervening at such a young age.
What about the loss of a grandparent or the loss of an animal, especially in a violent death?
Absolutely. Ethan disclosed that one of his sort of soulmate was a large dog that he had cherished, and it died at home, and he was the one tasked with having to remove it and take it back to the shed and figure out how to dispose of it.
And you saw the Google searches where he actually is looking how to dispose of a dog that has passed away. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Despite how disturbing that is, the disposing of a family dog, that a parent would ask their kid to do that, it's beyond me. But despite also the fact that the parents used to fight, and whether it was figuratively or literally, it would say, oh, I'm going to kill myself. I'm just going to not talk about that at the moment, but instead talk about the fact that the judge noted in his opinion that the defendant's age, Ethan, his age and maturity didn't go hand in hand. So pretty much he was very mature for his age, wise beyond his years to a certain extent. Pretty much it was said that all he did was work, do homework, and play video games, especially during COVID where pretty much everything was on lockdown. Did he play with friends on these video games? We don't know about that. We really don't know. And he also persuaded his father to ease in the direction of buying him the 9mm pistol, the one that was used in the shooting. So not only is he managing to try to paint himself as the victim in these journal entries, but at the same time say sickly, disturbing things about innocent people and how he wants to see them hurt, but he's also devising a plan as to how to get the gun, how he manipulated the parents into thinking he was normal, why he doesn't have time to hang out with friends. Why he doesn't have friends is avoided. He doesn't talk about friends. He doesn't talk about the value of humanity. And also, I don't find it very convincing that playing violent video games or seeing, quote unquote, certain types of graphic conduct in videos online at his age is abnormal. I think that's pretty normal. Most kids play WWE, Call of Duty, Mortal Kombat, whatever the case. It involves, in the very nature of it, a degree of violence. Let me get this straight. He just said he wants to shoot his first victim in the back of their skull. He said he was going to open fire in the hallway and shoot as many people as he can. And in the same breath is professing the value of life.
An individual by the name of Ethan Crumbley.
Yes.
And when did you first meet him?
He became on my caseload in the fall of 2020. The only memory I have of meeting him during his freshman year would have been when we did scheduling, and I do not remember that meeting specifically because we did them via Zoom. So I had approximately 3 grades worth of Zoom meetings with students in a 3-week period.
So you meet with all 400 students to schedule every year?
Aside from seniors, yes.
Okay. When was the next time after freshman year that you had any interaction with this student?
The only interaction I had previous to November 29th was I had received an email from a teacher that he seemed sad.
Which teacher was that?
Diana McConnell, his Spanish teacher.
And do you remember approximately what?
It would have been
Okay.
early November. and I had just what I would call a check-in. I waited for him outside the classroom and said, hey, I heard you might be having a rough time. I'm here for you if you need to talk.
And what did he say?
He just looked at me, said, okay, and did not follow up with anything.
Any interaction with him?
The morning of November 29th.
And can you tell the court what that was?
There was an email sent to our Dean of Students and a Restorative Practices Coordinator that was then forwarded to me from an English teacher stating that the student had been looking at bullets on his phone in class. So,
Go ahead.
so the student was called down to the office by a Restorative Practices Coordinator who then called me to ask me to be in the meeting as social emotional support for the student.
And did you do that?
I did.
And do you know approximately what time that was?
It was approximately 9 in the morning on the 29th.
Okay. About how long did that meeting take place?
About 5 minutes.
And what was the student's demeanor?
Compliant, calm, understanding. I did not lead the meeting. I was just there in the meeting. But the student understood that it was not school appropriate behavior when that was discussed as the reason
How do you
for
know
being
that?
called down.
How do you know that he understood that?
He claimed that he understood that that was not school appropriate behavior.
Was he argumentative?
No,
Was he oppositional?
no.
Okay. Did you get any other information about that incident?
No other information about that incident.
Did he have any explanation as to why he was doing what he was doing?
He did. He stated that the previous weekend, Mom and him went to a gun range and went shooting, that it was a hobby that they participated in, and he was researching regarding that hobby.
When was the next time you had any interaction with this student?
The morning of November 30th.
And how did that occur?
I had received an email from a co-teacher in that English class stating that he was looking at a video on his phone. The video was of some sort of shooting. It was said in the email that it was not an actual event. When I met with the student, it was described as a video game.
Okay, we'll
I
get there in a moment. About what time was that email?
That email was sent to me at 8:30. I saw it at 8:50.
Okay, and anything else occur after that?
Yes. Around the same time, the student had switched classes and was in his math class. That was when there was drawings done on his math assignment.
When was the first time that you were alerted to this math assignment?
Our Dean of Students came to my office around 9 a.m. To let me know that he had received a picture, actually had been shown a picture of a math assignment.
And did you see it at that time?
I had not seen the assignment at that time.
Okay, what, if anything, did you do next?
I went to the classroom to get him out of the classroom to have a meeting with him.
And when you greeted him, how would you describe his demeanor?
I didn't see much of a demeanor at the time. He was sitting in the front row of the classroom. So I just said, hey, we need to talk.
Okay, and what did you do after that?
I was standing with him. He stood up and followed me out of the class. I had grabbed the math assignment off his desk.
Okay, and you took him back to your office?
Back to my office where
Okay.
the Dean of Students was waiting.
All right, and tell the court what happened in that meeting.
We had a conversation regarding initially the email that I had received about the video.
So when you're talking about we had a conversation, you're talking about you and Crumbley?
Correct. So I had a conversation about the video to ask what it was, because the email was not overly descriptive as to what it was. And that's when he told me that it was of a video game. I never saw the video, so I had a description of it being a video game per the student and not an actual event per the teacher who had referred it.
Okay, so at the time that you brought the student into the room and had the meeting with him, you knew about the email and you had heard about this math assignment.
Correct.
And you had it in your hand.
Correct.
What was the purpose of bringing him into the office? Was it a violation of a school code? What was your role and why did you meet with him?
At the time, I did not know whether there was a violation of the school code or not, based on having not observed the drawing at the time. I did have concern about the student because it was a couple of messages in a couple of days, and the purpose of the meeting was to find out what our next steps would be.
And when you said you had concern, what was your concern?
My concern was that I wanted to make sure he was okay.
Okay. So what happened after he sat down? What did you tell him he was there for?
That we had to discuss an email I had received, and also we had to discuss his math assignment.
Okay. And how did that go?
At first, he was very similar to how he had been the previous day, compliant and understanding. With the email, he regarded it as a video game, stated that he had an interest in designing video games after high school. Then I put the math assignment in between the two of us. He sat across from me at my desk, and I said, I would like to go over some of this. He said that it was a video game drawing that he had done in relation to the pictures that were on the assignment.
At that time, there were two versions of that math assignment.
Correct.
Okay. Which version did you have?
I had the hard copy version, which had been doctored.
Okay. And that's exhibits.
And then Dr.
Yeah, I'm going to show it, Your Honor. That's exhibit 78.
And so I wanted to ask, what does this mean? This does not sound like a video game.
Okay. And what did he say?
His demeanor then changed. He became sad.
And when you say he became sad, what did that look like? Why do you think he was sad?
He started pausing more in his speech. He then described some things that had happened recently in his life.
What were those things?
He talked about how a family dog had died. He talked about that he had lost a grandparent, that COVID had been incredibly difficult for him, that being out of school the previous year had been difficult for those virtual days. He talked about a friend who had left, that wasn't able to attend school anymore, had moved. And he talked about an argument about grades a previous night with parents.
With what?
With his parents.
Okay. What did you do next?
At that point, I determined that there was enough suicidal ideation based on his sadness and based on some of the words he had written on there that I called Mom.
When did you see the other version of this worksheet, the original, which is Exhibit 7? Can you put that up on the screen?
The original was forwarded to me in an email, and I saw it approximately 20 minutes later.
Okay, was it
Later.
After seeing the original.
was it before you called parents or after?
I don't remember.
Okay. Let's talk. You said you were concerned about suicide ideation.
I was.
Okay. Can you tell the court what you consider and what you've learned in your field is suicide ideation?
Suicidal ideation are thoughts, patterns, behaviors, feelings associated with suicide. Sadness, depression, negative self-talk, all of those themes that we see associated with suicide.
Is that the same thing as active?
It is not.
Actively suicidal. What
It
is
is
the
not.
difference?
Actively suicidal would contain a plan, a method, a date, action statements, something that he could take action on.
And how do you determine if it's ideation versus being actively suicidal?
Some of it is taking the information that you have in front of you. I also asked Ethan if he was a threat to himself or others.
So is this part of, you did a risk assessment?
Correct.
Okay, what is a risk assessment?
A risk assessment is looking to gain information on how the person in front of you is and what level of either suicide risk or self-harm risk they may display.
I know this social emotional duty is part of your job, but how often are you encountering a student that is either has suicidal ideation or actively suicidal?
As it has become much more frequent, especially in the past year. This year on my caseload, I've had 3 students make attempts.
You've had what?
I've had 3 students make attempts.
Okay. And did that occur, did you speak with, Emily, similar assessments with those students, or you found out after?
It's been different for each one. One, I did have a very similar assessment.
Okay.
Sir, you need to get your room a little bit closer, your voice is kind of trailing at the end, so I'm missing.
It does trail at the end. All right. How many of these check-ins, like the one you did with this student, are you doing? Is this a frequent thing? Is this abnormal? Is it unusual?
It's becoming more common lately. I would state that it happens minimal, once or twice per month, in just a normal school year.
All right. And every one of those meetings, do you end up calling parents?
I do.
And what triggers a call to a parent?
When the student is a minor,
Yes.
when I have concerns about, that's my statement, when the student is a minor. When I have concerns that there needs to be follow-up mental health support for a student. When I have concerns that the student may potentially become suicidal.
Okay. So at some point you said you did call a parent. And
I did.
Who did you call?
I called mom.
Why did you call mom?
I always give students the choice of who they would like me to call. The student stated that mom would be easier to get a hold of.
What was his reaction or demeanor about you calling a parent?
He was very muted at that point. Almost, I would describe it as like resigned to the fact that I was going to call home.
Did he object?
No,
Did he ask you not to?
no.
Okay. Did you get a hold of mom?
I left a voicemail with mom.
And did she call you back?
She did eventually. In between the call back, I also called dad. I don't know whether the phone was answered or not. It was empty air when I called.
You did eventually speak to mom.
I did.
And when you spoke to her, was Ethan in the room?
He was.
Was the phone on speaker, or was it just you talking?
I put the phone on speaker.
Okay. And what did, by the way, do you see her anywhere in the courtroom today?
I haven't looked.
Could you look, please? Do you see, it's Jennifer Crumbley, correct? Do you see her in the
Correct.
courtroom today?
Correct.
Can you describe what she's wearing?
I can just see her face. She has a gray mask, glasses.
All right. Your Honor.
You might have to step aside a little bit. Can you describe the article of clothing that she's wearing?
Can I stand?
Sure.
Sure.
Gray stripes with white stripes on the shirt.
May the record reflect he's properly identified. Okay, thank you. What did Jennifer Crumbley say on speakerphone?
She wanted to talk to Ethan and ask what was going on. He gave a response of, I don't know, was kind of his response.
What did you tell Mom?
I stated that I was concerned about Ethan based on some of the time I'd had speaking with him and based on the assignment and information I had. I then sent a photo of exhibit, is it 78?
The second version?
The second,
Yes.
the second version to Mom.
Was it your impression that she wanted Dad to come because she couldn't come, or that she wanted both of them to come? What did she say?
My impression was that she was hoping that Dad would be able to come because she wouldn't be able to come.
Okay, but eventually she said she was coming.
Correct.
Okay. And who eventually showed up at the school?
Both mom and dad.
How long approximately did that take? Do you know what time that they?
That they arrived?
Yes.
It was, I believe, around 10:30.
Okay, so you, in the meantime, where was Ethan?
He was with me. I didn't want to leave him alone.
Okay, and what were you doing?
We had further conversations about some plans for him after high school. Typically, when a student is waiting for parents to arrive, it's a nerve-wracking time for the student. And I don't want them to be focused on that moment if I can help it.
That I'm not going to do anything. Did you stop there or did you ask him any more questions?
I asked him specific questions about what he had written. I did not ask any further questions about a plan.
Okay. And why not?
Because he stated that he was not a threat to himself or others.
Okay. When mom and dad arrived, let's back up. How many times approximately a year do you have a situation where you're concerned about a student's mental health and their safety and you call parents in?
12 to 15 per year.
Okay. And can you tell the court what happened when they arrived? Did you go get them or did somebody else?
I went to go get them in the counseling office lobby.
And who else was in that meeting?
The student was in that meeting, and then I also texted our dean to return for that meeting.
Okay, so who arrived first, the dean or the parents?
The parents.
Okay. And where were you when the parents entered the room? Were you in front of them or behind them?
I was in front of them.
Okay. And what happened when they walked in the room?
It was different than other meetings I've seen.
Why is that?
They weren't friendly or showing care to their student.
To their son?
To their son.
Did they greet him?
No.
Did they touch him?
No.
Did they hug him?
No.
Where did Jennifer Crumbley sit?
I have 3 seats in my office that are not mine. 2 directly across from me and 1 that's more off to the side.
So you're at a desk?
I'm at a desk.
You're behind the desk and there's 2...
There would be 2 seats across from me and then 1 that would not be far from where our judge is sitting.
So about how many feet?
I would say about 7 feet from me.
Okay. Where did Jennifer Crumbley sit?
In the seat further away.
And where did James Crumbley sit?
Next to Ethan.
And what happened next?
I described why I was concerned about Ethan. That he had stated that he was not a threat to himself, but I had concerns about suicidal ideation, and I had concerns about his well-being. I provided a list of resources.
Well, let's back up for a second. Did Jennifer or James ask any questions about what suicide ideation is?
Not to my memory.
Okay. Did they ask any questions at all before you talked about any mental health services?
Not to my memory.
Okay. Did you ask them for any input or did you ask them any questions?
Not at that point.
Okay. So what happened?
So I provided a list of resources of mental health supports and stated that though Ethan doesn't, though he states he's not a threat, that I am concerned about his well-being and that I am concerned that he needs somebody to talk to for mental health support.
And did you tell either one of them when that should occur?
I said as soon as possible, today if possible.
And what was the response?
But today was not an option because they had to return to work. My response
Just
was...
slow down for a second. Did both of them say that? Did one of them say that?
Mom said that.
Okay. And her exact words were what?
Today is not possible. We have to return to work.
And what did James Crumbley say?
I don't remember anything being said by him about it.
Did he say that my standard is an ordinary care?
Go ahead.
In any of your meetings, when you call parents because you have that kind of concern, have you ever had anybody say no?
I have never had parents arrive to the school and not take their student home.
If you tell them they need to.
Correct.
Okay. So what did you do?
I was a little bit taken aback by that. When parents stated that they could not take their student home that day, my statement was, I want him seen within 48 hours. I'll be following up.
Okay. Did you ask them to take him home, or did you ask them to take him to get?
I asked them to take him to get therapy.
Okay. And what was the response when you said follow up? You were going to follow up and it needed to happen in 48 hours.
I would describe it as compliant. Of okay. I didn't have a reason to believe it wouldn't happen. I didn't feel 100% confident that it would happen.
And what was your primary concern at that moment?
My primary concern was that Ethan would not be alone.
And why didn't you want him to be alone?
Because suicidal ideation, I don't want a student left alone.
Okay. Did the demeanor or lack of conversation or interaction with him by James and Jennifer, did it seem to have any impact on him?
Not different than I had seen previously with the generalized sadness. I would describe that was how he stayed throughout most of the meeting. His demeanor did not shift.
When you had that hope, you gave them a list of counselors to suggest they call, and noting which ones took various insurance programs, correct?
Yes, I provided a list of resources.
Now, in terms of getting a counseling appointment within one day, you don't have any knowledge if those counselors on that list could guarantee a same-day appointment, correct?
I don't know counselor schedules, and I can't speculate on what they would have had.
Is it fair to say that in the post-COVID time of 2021, mental health services have become more difficult to obtain appointments? And if you don't know and you're not the right person to ask, just let me know.
I don't work in community mental health, so I can't make that statement.
Have you personally had to call to schedule therapy-type appointments for anyone?
I experienced a shooting. I called to cancel to get therapy for myself.
Okay, and when you called to get therapy for yourself, it was obviously a very, very urgent situation.
I mean, it was a pretty impactful situation, yes.
Okay, and did you end up seeing a counselor on the 30th?
No, I was cooperating with law enforcement and still in our building on the 30th.
Okay, so your appointment was sometime after the 30th, correct?
It was after the 30th.
And sometimes when you call to get a counseling appointment, it's not unusual to have to wait a couple of days or to schedule it, correct?
I think we're getting a little hypothetical with this, and I can't speculate on what's usual or not for counselors in this area.
That's fair enough. I appreciate that. Speaking with Mrs. Crumbley's son, it's fair to say that you and Mrs. Crumbley's son discussed whether he wanted to stay in school that day or go home prior to the arrival of Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley. Is that correct?
That did come up, yes.
And Mrs. Crumbley's son's position was, I want to stay in school, correct?
Correct.
COVID had been hard on him. He didn't like virtual learning. Was that your understanding?
He did state those two things, yes.
And there was discussion when the parents arrived that missing school is a source of anxiety for Mrs. Crumbley's son. Do you recall that?
I do.
So before Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley even got there, the option for Mrs. Crumbley's son to stay in school was on the table.
Well, there is no option of staying in school. School is a requirement unless you meet certain standards in which it is no longer available to you.
Okay. If a child gets sick at school, at Oxford High School, and vomits, okay, Are they allowed to stay in school the rest of the day?
I don't know, that's not something I deal with.
Okay. Are you aware if a child has a temperature, if they are allowed to stay in school? And if you're not aware, let me know.
If they are allowed to stay in school,
Yes.
if we didn't, like, again, hypothetical, but not my area, I don't send students home.
Okay. Are you aware if the school will tell parents you need to take this child home if they are sick at school, physically sick?
The only time I remember that being a discussion was during COVID.
Okay, during COVID, were kids who were exposed to COVID allowed to be in school?
No, because we were following rules and regulations outside of the school.
So even if parents said, I want my child to be in school, he has COVID, but I want him to be there, that's not allowed, right?
Judge, I have to object to relevance now. We're awfully far afield.
No, I think he said that that's not up to him, that's maybe,
Correct.
is that up to like the school nurse or some person? Like
There is no school nurse. The COVID tracing was not through the school, that was through the county health department.
All I'm asking is, there are times where if a child is sick, it's not an option for them to be present in school.
When the county health department regulated that, yes.
And you testified that if there had been a discipline issue as to Mrs. Crumbley's son, that may have been grounds to make him have to go home that day, correct?
That could be the case depending on the discipline issue.
And in terms of the discipline issue, I realize you're not the discipline person, but the school has the option, depending on what's correct, they could suspend a student, they could expel a student, there's processes over school discipline, correct?
There is a process, I am not a part of that process.
That it's your testimony that in this case, the school did not find a discipline issue with respect to to Mrs. Crumbley's son.
That is correct. There was nothing that was determined as a discipline issue.
So it was not a discipline issue that he was looking up bullets on his cell phone during a class.
I would not be the one making that determination.
In this case, that was not something he was disciplined for by the school.
I already stated I was not a part of any potential disciplines. To my knowledge, no.
Same thing with watching videos on a phone. The school did not make a discipline issue that would cause Mrs. Crumbley's son to go home for sitting and watching videos on his phone during class, correct?
There was nothing that was determined to be a discipline issue.
And Mrs. Crumbley's son sitting and drawing on math paper instead of actually doing the math paper he's supposed to be doing, as far as you're aware, the school also didn't find there to be a disciplinary violation for that.
Judge, Mr. Appleton already testified that discipline is in this area, that's Mr. Ejak's area.
because he doesn't make that determination, is that?
I'll ask Mr. Ejak then when he testifies.
So pretty much the guidance counselor said that the call that he makes is pretty much that he thinks that Ethan should stay in school and be around other people because he might be suicidal. I understand that rationale, but this all should be noted in a code of conduct. I remember when I was in literally 4th grade, which all schools have a code of conduct, and despite the fact that it's Michigan and it's legal for a 15-year-old to have a gun for hunting purposes, the fact of the matter is when someone's drawing guns, namely a student, a young student, and you have reason to believe that they are not very social, they're quiet, they're drawing things on paper, they're very reserved, and you can't really get a good read on them, you need to get them help immediately. So while I understand the guidance counselor's basis for his judgment, I've been in schools where we have a code of conduct. These things are highlighted. Any remotely terroristic or violent expression is met with great concern. And I think most schools are like this. So the fact that drawing these things and the student being someone the teachers have known for a while, being able to vouch that this is abnormal, should have been enough to warrant him being sent home or suspended. More importantly and more basically, when you invite his parents into the school to discuss what happened, didn't it occur to anyone in that meeting, the counselor, the dean, the mother, the father, to say, "You're drawing guns. This is concerning. Do you have a gun?" To which he would respond, or the parent would respond and say, "Yes, he does." Huh, where is it? I mean, this is the most basic approach and the most simple yet effective way of figuring out if he has the ability to carry out this type of terrorism. I mean, I'm thinking while I'm listening to this testimony, how isn't drawing a gun or watching these violent videos concerning? Why isn't it concerning to the guidance counselor? Why didn't that question get asked? And no, I'm not trying to blame the guidance counselor. You know, he thought that Ethan was suicidal, but whether or not you thought he was suicidal and the parents were concerned about going back to work, that's neither here nor there. The question should have been, he's drawing guns, where is the gun? He is in school. Why is he thinking about guns in school? Why is he watching these videos while he's in school? Why is he researching bullets? Why is this a recurring theme? What can we do here? I mean, the first question that I would have asked that would have truly made a difference is, do you own a gun? I mean, where is it? To which you could probably read his demeanor changing, and then you could see, well, he has one. He's not telling us where it is. And a lot could have been avoided. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's the most basic question, the most important question, and yet it wasn't asked. He wasn't sent home. What he was drawing wasn't disciplinary at all. And I mean, it's beyond. And I mention that because these are the factors being considered in painting his childhood as some extraordinary traumatic experience. But I will admit, the dog thing is, I don't even have the words, but aside from that, being left home alone from time to time, not weeks on end, which isn't the case here, but staying home alone for a few hours while you wait for your parents who work to get home from work is not abnormal, nor was he hindered from or discouraged from finding a hobby of some sort. Like, you're 15 years old. I see no convincing evidence as to why you cannot be a slightly more efficient teenager. Like, this should already be within you, creating a plan. When are you taking the SATs? Do you not want to take the SATs? What's your goal here? All this to say, video games, being left home alone every once in a while, and your parents fighting, that's the harsh reality of society. Happens to everyone. Not everyone does what he did.
The door is shut.
Are you facing the door or facing the
I'm
way?
facing the door, so I'm close enough to that wall because I had just grabbed it.
Do you know about what the distance was between you and that door?
Not even a foot.
Okay. And then what happened?
I look at it, and out of my peripheral vision, I can see some sort of movement. And so I look up, and I see someone dressed in dark, oversized clothing.
And you're looking through that glass
Looking
pane
through that glass
next
pane.
to your door. Okay.
They have the mask on, a hat, glasses, and a hood. And I lock eyes with them.
Had you ever seen that person before?
I had not, no.
Did you know if it was a student or is that a no?
I did not know if it was a student.
All right. And you said you locked eyes?
I locked eyes. And then instantly I noticed, I see some movement. And so I look down and I realize he's raising a gun to me.
Okay. Can you describe?
Yeah, the gun was black, and I remember thinking, as he's raising the gun to me, that there was no orange tip. I'd heard prior that BB guns have an orange tip.
When you say he was raising the gun, can you explain what that looked like? Was it one arm or two arms?
Well, I just saw the one starting to move up. I saw the gun, and I moved.
Which way did you move?
I moved away from the glass partition, away from the door, toward back into the room.
Okay. You just described you saw something in your peripheral vision. You looked up. You locked eyes.
I locked eyes. He didn't hesitate.
Okay. About how long was that from the time you saw the peripheral vision and then the gun was raised?
A second,
Okay.
if that.
When you locked eyes with this individual, what did you see?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Describe that for me.
I lock eyes with him, and I instantly see that movement. And I jump to the side.
Okay. What happened after you jumped to the side?
As I jump, I can.
And was the night? Did you ever get the night lock installed at that
The
point?
night lock is not installed at this point.
Okay.
So when I move, I kind of jump and turn my body this way at the same time.
Okay, and for the record, you're motioning, turning your
Yeah.
shoulders to the right.
To the right. And I feel like my left shoulder moves back a bit, and I feel a burn like hot water had stung me.
Where did you feel that?
In my arm,
Which arm?
in my left arm.
Okay.
Up
And you're
top.
pointing to your
Yeah.
right below your shoulder?
Yep.
Okay. And are you standing up? Are you sitting down? Are you?
I'm standing up at this point in time. I feel that hot burn go through my arm, and I turn back. There was a window in the back of my room that leads out to the courtyard, and I see a bullet hole.
Okay, I'm going to show you on the screen what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 6.
Objection. 6 is in order.
What is that, Molly?
That's the office that I shared.
Okay, and that, can you just describe where the desk is, where what you just described and point that out? You said
Yep.
you turned around to the back of the classroom.
Yep, so you can see on that window exiting, there's a white.
Ethan Crumbley, age 15. And I'm going to be the next school shooter. In my head, every conversation I have with someone, no matter what, I'm thinking about it and I can't get it out. November 29th, 2021, 10:05 p.m. The school I'm shooting up is Oxford High School. I'm in 10th grade there. I've always been fascinated by guns when I was a kid. And I always wanted to join the forces of SWAT when I was in 3rd grade. Navy SEALs when I was in 4th. Marines, 5th or 7th, Army, Rangers. And I've never thought of a career. I've never had motivation. That was right in front of me, and I never realized it. I was always the kid who said, work hard in school and you'll get a career in life. But the career is bullshit. And it was right in front of my fucking eyes the whole time. I couldn't see it. The school system is... Their main goal is to put youth just born into this world to learn. And you know, they actually learn fucking good. They learn K through 5. They learn useful stuff. Stuff about the world that teaches them not how the world is, but how it should be, and how they want it to be. The teachers brainwash them into what they think is right, and their minds are so underdeveloped that the adults just take advantage of it. The war happened, but peace was a thing. People understood everything. People understood the logistics of human civilization. The time from 1920 to 1980 was the golden ages of humanity. Some countries may not have been that way, but for the big ones, it was the golden age. Everyone understood the world, but knew how to keep it in order. They knew the differences because war and peace. They knew that they could cooperate and live together.
I can't waste another second listening to that dragged out attempt at a justification to paint society as this thing that it used to be 100 years ago when he wasn't even remotely alive and learned in school the concept of the Gilded and the Golden Age. Mind you, he's denouncing the entire school system and career and education system. The harsh reality is you have to work hard, period, the end. He gave up, he lost motivation. I understand that, but don't take that out on other people. And also, it's the way that he's so sure that this is how society cooperates. There's no other option except you work or you go to school and whatever the case. Well, newsflash, most kids have a tough life. Most adults have a tough life. Life is tough. I mean, did he expect or think that everything was just gonna come exactly when he snapped his fingers? This is a working class, and as a matter of fact, the Gilded Age and the Golden Age were that way because people worked and because there was peace. So while you're praising this era that you don't really know much about, you are acting in complete hypocrisy to it.
2021, I'm going to walk to the dividend between the boys and the girls' bathroom. I will have my black jacket on, and I will walk behind someone, and I will shoot a bullet in their skull. Yeah, that's my first victim. I'm going to open fire on everyone in that hallway. The hallways are too jam-packed. I will try and hit as many people as I can. I will reload, and I will find people hiding. I'm going to teach them a lesson of how they're wrong, how they're being brainwashed. I understand that I'm going to prison for this. Michigan doesn't have a death penalty. I don't want to die. As funny as it may seem, I'm going to kill other people. I do not want to die. I realize how valuable life is. And I realized I broke the code of what's happening. I broke the code. I realized what is actually happening. And these people, they don't have the capabilities of understanding it.
So pretty much he's cracked the code on life and he's smarter than everyone. And, you know, this is why he's shooting up a school. Let's talk about what Dr. Lisa Anaker testified. She had said at the time of the offense, Ethan was very, seemingly depressed, but mainly it was just a lack of motivation, sleep, loss of appetite. These are also not to always be confused with some psychological ailment. This is life, in my opinion. I mean, I have a psychology degree, and these are things that people do when they're going through a stressful time, meaning they won't sleep as much, they won't eat as much, they might, be a little bit shaky. But I mean, this could not only be because of stress, but it could be just because you're busy. You have a higher workload than usual, you're not getting enough rest. This isn't always necessarily depression. So, while I do think that he is extremely troubled and in a sense depressed, I don't know the specifics, but I will say that he's disturbed, and psychologically, he does have motivation. Not where it would be productive and beneficial to society, but he has a motivation to ruin people's lives. That's what gives him joy and pleasure.
Psychosis isn't the only type of mental illness. You would agree with me?
Correct.
Okay. Not everybody with debilitating mental illness is walking down the street and talking to voices. You would agree with me?
Correct.
Okay. And I believe you touched on this before. A psychotic episode doesn't last perpetually, correct? It's not forever.
Correct.
Okay. So someone may be having a psychotic episode and then return to reality.
Not in the way that this was displayed, no. Because again, without intervention, without some sort of antipsychotic treatment or psychiatric intervention, it would be very atypical for someone to be acutely psychotic and hallucinating and show no signs of that afterwards or in the days, weeks, and months following the offense.
She's basically saying that as much as he tried to paint himself as somebody who's psychotic, seeing things and hearing things, he's actually not. He isn't after the fact, and he just is a raging murderer.
You testified earlier that there was no bizarre behavior. Is your testimony that shooting fellow students is not bizarre behavior?
Not in a way that indicates mental illness, no. Again, we're not saying that it's good behavior or that it's normal behavior, but not all murder, not all violence is attributable to mental illness.
Surrounding this period of time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And again, I know we talked about this before. Mental illness presents itself in many ways, correct?
Yes and no, counselor. If someone's acutely psychotic, that presents in a typical way. So yes, everyone is different, and anxiety might present differently than depression, but there are set things that we expect clinically if someone is acutely psychotic, and he did not display any of those.
Okay. And then testified it was the rubric, and that's why that happened. This line of questioning has no relevance to that topic because this is Dr. Anaker's own work product. So I object.
Thank you. Your response, relevant.
Your Honor, in response, obviously they were attacking Dr. King because the report was similar to someone else's report. The point of what I am going through here, and I can speed it up to the opinion that she has, it is the exact same wording, and that was attacked very, very harshly when it came to Dr. King. So whether he was using a rubric from a different doctor or using a report from a different case, it is a different case and a different set of facts. So if the summary opinion that she has signed here is the exact same in this other case that she has reviewed, I believe that it's relevant.
Thank you. If you could please get to the point, I'm going to sustain the objection, but you may ask the question about the conclusion.
Thank you, Judge.
Of course. Let's move to the opinion then.
Yes, let's.
Let's go to opinion regarding mental illness.
Yes.
That is page 59 on Ethan's report, page 20 of MC. You would agree with me that both reports state regarding the question of whether you substitute a new patient's name in, had a mental illness as defined by statute at the time of the alleged incident for which he is charged. It is my opinion that he did not, correct?
Correct, because I also thought that patient did not have a mental illness. That's just stating my opinion.
Sure, and it's the exact same sentence structure, the exact same sentence, correct?
All it's stating is regarding the
I'm asking yes or no. Is
yes.
it the same?
Yes.
Let's move then to opinion regarding relevant capacities.
Okay.
That is page 64 on Ethan's report, page 24 on the other report. You would agree with me that it is the exact same except the name is switched?
It's a restatement of the statutory guidelines.
I'm asking yes or no. Is it the same except you switch out the name?
Yes, because the statutory guidelines are the same.
Let's move to the very last page of your report.
Okay.
And of Ethan's report. Summary opinion. Would you agree with me it is word for word the same except you switch out the person's name?
Because it is relisting the statutory definition of mental illness. Yes, counselor.
And that is your summary opinion. It is the exact same in both cases. You're switching out the name.
Because you can't change the statute. The definition is the same, no matter how you write it. So what I am restating in my summary opinion in both cases is that I did not believe the person met the statutory definition. So yes, it is the same.
That you believe the defendant has a mental illness that constitutes a substantial disorder, correct?
I did.
And that you believe it significantly impaired his judgment, behavior, and capacity to recognize reality?
I did.
Okay. And, doctor, is it your testimony that this defendant is not criminally responsible?
My testimony is that Ethan Crumbley is mentally ill.
I understand that. And now I'm asking you the next question, which is it your testimony that he's not criminally responsible?
I'm going to object. That is not what we are here to argue today. We are not arguing criminal responsibility. The defendant has pled and we withdrew our insanity defense notice.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
I think it's very important whether this doctor thinks that he is not criminally responsible. If that's his opinion, I think the court can take that into consideration.
If your objection is overruled, I will also may continue.
So Ethan Crumbley has pled guilty to the crimes. The facts are the facts, and they cannot be taken back, sir.
Doctor, that's not my question to you. My question is, you understand the legal concept of criminal responsibility, and you yourself have prepared reports regarding criminal responsibility in other cases, correct?
That is correct.
So you understand the legal standard.
Yes, sir.
And you know the first step is mental illness that's a substantial disorder that significantly impairs the defendant's judgment, behavior, capacity to recognize reality, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've already testified, in your opinion, he meets that criteria, right?
Yes, sir.
And now I'm asking you the second step. Do you believe that he's criminally insane?
I believe he's mentally ill, and his mental illness played a factor into the events of the shooting.
So, doctor, it's a yes or no question. Do you believe he's criminally insane, or do you not believe that?
He's already pled guilty, sir.
Please answer the question directly, doctor. If you can, please re-ask your question.
Is it your opinion that this defendant meets the legal definition of criminal insanity? Is that your opinion?
I don't think so, sir.
Okay. And why is that?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
Why is it that you believe he suffers from a statutorily defined mental illness, but you do not believe that he's criminally insane?
So I believe he has a diagnosable mental illness, and he engaged in a horrific act which took the lives of several students, and he's pled guilty. And my understanding is that he was found to not be criminally insane, and I will go with that opinion, sir.
Okay. And you know from your own work what the second step is after mental illness, right? What is the second step? What is it that this defendant does not have that makes him not that makes him not insane?
Sure. That's a very high standard one has to prove. One has to prove that a mental illness was directly related to the act that followed.
Right. And so, doctor, the legal term is that the defendant, in fact, appreciates the nature and quality of the wrongfulness of his conduct. That's the standard, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, to the layperson, it means the defendant knew right from wrong, right?
That is correct.
And it's further evident where we saw, as I said in the beginning of the video, with his Google searches the day before the shooting, and multiple times where he researched what was the aftermath, what was the effect that the Nicholas Cruz school shooting had on the community and society. Obviously, nothing positive. And so here he is after the fact, while he's getting in trouble at this correction center for using a tablet, looking up things about his case, interested and invested in seeing, with the sole purpose, the pain that he's caused these people. Probably wanted to see the faces of those he's killed and how it was him that did it. I just think that it's so disturbing that he returned to the same search engine after the crime, almost in pursuit, as if he did it. And now when he searches, he's on there, as if he was anticipating the whole time. Something mentioned in the trial of his mother, Jennifer Crumbley, as well as in bits and pieces throughout this trial, is his messy room, which, not for nothing, most teenagers' rooms are messy, but it relates to this issue that he was having in jail, where he's had a few misconducts. He wasn't listening to the deputies who were telling him to clear off the trash at his window cell, just things like that, and it's just blatant disregard for the circumstances that he's in. Almost like there's some reason why he shouldn't have to keep his space clean. I haven't really even began to scratch the surface of this case that's unfolding between the defendant's mother, and now the father is awaiting trial, coming in the next week or two. But this is my first video, and I am just doing my best to learn as I go, I guess. The best way to structure videos. Any constructive criticism is appreciated. If you want me to tone it down with the opinions, tone it up. Yeah, I'm open to criticism, but I'm also open to compliments. So, with that being said, thank you for watching.